Hello, welcome to our next installment where we are interviewing Dr. Victor Taylor today, the General Secretary of Finance. My name is Kenneth Pettigrew. I am the chaplain of the Connectional Young Adult Ministry, and I'm happy to welcome him here to have a conversation about mission, vision, strategy, and stewardship, and what that means for the future of our church and the lives of young adults. So, Dr. Taylor, welcome.
Thank you. Good to be with you this morning. It's a lovely morning here in Chicago, actually. It's tremendous winter so far.
This is quite a lovely morning in North Carolina. It's going to be 71 degrees today.
Oh, wow. Yeah. That's even better.
Yes. Maybe even a little terrifying.
A little. Just a little.
Just a little terrifying. But yeah, let's launch into our questions. So the first thing I'd like to ask you is, so what is the mission and vision of the Department of Finance?
Certainly, it's been a joy to serve and to come after a distinguished General Secretary, my predecessor, CFO, Dr. Joseph C. Neal Jr. So he likes to say that when he got in office, basically all he got was a checkbook with about $20,000, and then in the years, 32 of them turned that into 6 million plus. So really, it is to look after the best interests of both the members of the CME Church and the church itself. That involves having fidelity to Scripture first, discipline second, and then there are civil matters and laws to be aware of. Not that I'm a lawyer or not even an accountant, but to see that we have access to the kind of resources that we need really to sustain, project, and make the church both survive and thrive financially, as it were, and see to it that the resources are available for those purposes, but really to look after the best interests of the members and of the general church as reflected in the financial resources that we are able to generate and make available.
So thinking about those resources, I do. The next question I did have, and you've already started to answer it some, was how the mission and vision of the department supports the life and realizing the mission and vision of the Connectional Church as a whole. When you start talking about resources being available and kind of looking down the road and projecting what the church might need, what do you kind of see those things as being?
Yeah, so they're different than what the church has done for a long time, as I mentioned, my predecessor, though, because we were blessed to be handed a pretty good hand. So we were able to build on the success, and not just to be comfortable, as it were, in Zion. So we really need to keep best practices in front of the church. So we never assume that the church already knows different aspects of best practices, because largely they're corporate. And so what we're trying to do, I used to say on the corporate side, well, I'm trying to bring some Christianity to corporate, but I'm also trying to bring corporate to Christianity. So there are many efficiencies, and I really call it a modernity dividend that we're able to glean. And because of the nature of things and politics, things can't be done all at once. So you say, hey, this is what we should be doing. This has been done for eons or decades on the corporate side. And but you have to bring people along, and really to see not just where you tell them this is in the church's best interest, but actually where it can benefit them, where it can benefit a prelate, or it can benefit general officers, or it can benefit the members. So we talk in terms of what people see as benefits for them. So sometimes something can have a feature but not be a benefit for a stakeholder. For example, if you live in, I don't know, Siberia, let's say, where it's always cold, and so the car dealer is saying, "Hey, this car has air conditioning." You're like, "I live in Siberia."
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
So that's a great feature, but it's of no benefit to me. So we want people to see that the benefits. So if we want a prelate to start to use something like this Zoom technology, or even something like FaceTime, might say something like, well, wouldn't it be nice to see your granddaughter or your grandson when you talk to her or to him? Then when they see the actual benefit to themselves, then perhaps they're willing to avail themselves of a particular feature. So we don't assume that the church already knows these things, and in large part we found that it does not. So we have to bring things along. And really, in a real sense, I took a lot of the aspects and a lot of things I learned from being General Secretary of the Department of Lay Ministry for 12 years. The same kind of thing, which at that time I said, well, we need to bring the church kicking and screaming into the 20th century. And of course, you know, it's now the 21st century.
Right.
So that's where we are, and we have to build coalitions such as the young adults who aid us in this mission and vision, and to really convince people that these are things that we can do, and but not just that something that we can do, but here's the particular benefit that you would find useful. So we're driving, really to mitigate and reduce, and ultimately to get on a glide path to eliminate general funds assessments, for example. And most of the time, we found that's a benefit to the members, whereas a prelate sees it as a threat. It was like, what? I don't want the churches to think they're not going to have to pay,
Yeah.
for different things. So those are some of the challenges, as well as that we're trying to kind of get people to embrace best practices, as well as to initiate them. So we very much are prone to get people to buy in and to have ownership of these ideas and practices.
Absolutely. So you've been talking about best practices and aspects of bringing a little of Christianity to corporate and corporate to Christianity. I think a question that comes up for me then is, what are some of the real conversations we need to have in our local churches about financial stability and stewardship?
Almost every local church or ministry is looking for more resources. And we're steadily in a process of convincing entities that it's no longer in vogue to simply assume that whatever it is they're doing, they should be doing. And if they should be doing it the way that they're doing it. So, for example, if we take the process of budgeting, And we recommend the same thing for the local churches that we are trying to embrace now and get really as something that's embraced by the denomination. That is to assume when doing budgeting that everything starts at zero.
Mhm.
So all line items, instead of saying, well, how much more do we have to put into finance or something like that? Just assume it's nothing. And then what is the justification for putting any resources into it? Same thing at the local church, because otherwise what we find is we become attached to groupthink, and where the process is driving us rather than we're behind driving the process. Um, so we want to get all the way to the local church, because as one of our famous leaders says, Dr. Sylvia Falk, of course, if it doesn't happen in a local church, it doesn't happen. We want them to embrace these types of concepts so they can bring the same thing to their district and to their annual conferences, where they're not just looking at, well, last year you gave $1,000 for the presiding elders district
Mhm.
and that work. What is the actual work, and what is the necessity and efficacy of that work?
Right.
So that has evidenced itself, for example, that we have been pushing and driving all of the Episcopal districts. Why do you have a headquarters?
Mhm.
You're charging your annual conference $40,000 a year for headquarters and upkeep. Why do you have a headquarters? How many people in the annual conference actually visit the headquarters?
Right.
What is the business being conducted at the headquarters? So we have in the Department of Finance and Investment, we have an address and we have a suite. So you look at our address in the Christian Index, there's an address and there's a suite. The suite is the post office. I mean, we don't need an office.
Yeah.
Where are you going to pay for an office? It's the 21st century.
Right.
Wherever we are, that's where the office is. We have the cloud, so we always have our computer, have our cell phone. We're never in a position or want to be in a position where we're telling people, well, we'll deal with that when we get back. So in a real sense, that's shown up in savings. So take something like um, people needing to travel. We do a lot of travel. We do a lot of eating in the CME church. So travel is a big thing. So people, you want to travel, you don't want to pay upfront for something. So in your general officer, you'd have to contact the representative, the agent, and then to get back and get approved by the CFO, and ultimately, and then a ticket gets issued, and then no, that price isn't there anymore, or something like that. So we made it where people, as you know, can log on. You're aware of that, and can do their travel. And then if there needs to be something else done, they can make something else. They can make a change, and it's within the control at least of the stakeholder. And then we're just going about approving it. So where the way it was before, after all of that was done with a live person agent, it was $35, and the way we have it set up is $6. So there again, that's the type of modernity dividend. So these things turn up in a real sense to really get that type of thought process as something systemic, where we can ultimately make it a part of the culture. And so we see that as very, very necessary. But it's not something
Mhm.
that's organic. Um, the business I do that I've done for 30 years, I'm an investment advisor, invest uh, companies, small companies and individuals' monies in the market and whatever. And the first time I even read the Wall Street Journal is when I got to graduate school. So it's just not something that's organic in our culture. So to assume that these things are known is a mistake. Just as when we're teaching in Christian education or teaching the Bible, just to assume that these things are known is a mistake. So we just want to get people away from just doing something because we've always done it a certain way. And to always be questioning and probing and looking to better ourselves. So in the local church resources, that reflects that every local church, virtually every local church, they say their rule or whatever, needs to have electronic giving. A lot of the local churches told me, oh, well, we're just a small church. Well, I'm a small church. I go to a small church. We have a relatively small budget here in Chicagoland. But our electronic giving, we would be probably 20% less revenues without the electronic giving. So every local church needs to have that and needs to embrace that. And all of our departments need to be thinking about how to get away from just coming to the church and asking for more money. And needs to be figuring out, how to generate some resources themselves.
We've talked a lot about, building something that would be ultimately like organically systemic, that we build new systems, new ways of thought. I want to hone in on that a little bit, particularly for the local church. Like, if you could name just one small change that can greatly improve the legacy and growth of our local churches when it comes to their finances, what would just like that possibly one small change be?
It's online giving. Beyond question. In fact, I was just going over something, even with my wife. I said, this morning, I looked at the numbers on the texting, and I said, babe, your giving was down about 50%. You need to just give a certain amount, like every week, electronic. You say, oh, I was out of town or whatever. Say, well, you need to just, and she's going to do it. Going to double her giving. Now I'm going to do the same thing with my son. It was the same thing with his record. So we're going to look at all the records and just see what happened. Because, you come to the year end and you say, oh, you need to give another $2,000. That's one thing versus saying, you need to give $40 a week.
Right.
So it is beyond question. And then also that I think a local church, that they seek tithers actively, certainly. I always tell our pastor, I said, get a tither, because the tither is worth, it's the 80-20 rule. And a lot of times in our local church, we get 8 times giving in tithes versus offering. So to the extent that you can generate, so we'll say, oh, we need all these members or whatever. I said, we need 3 more tithers. So that's what we want to get people thinking: electronic giving, systemic giving, and that in terms of local church, and in terms of finance. That's the world. If it's in the burning bush, I leave it to fall. But when it's in money, and finance, and that's the message that I'm bringing and I'm talking about. But that's beyond question.
Yeah, because I can speak personally to the effect of introducing online giving in a local congregation, because I as a millennial and as a young adult, I don't carry cash. I don't have a checkbook. So traditional methods of giving are actually more difficult, even when you're trying to be intentional about it, and can still easily forget, because there would be many Sundays and I forget to go to the ATM to get my tithes and offering out. But then as soon as we got an electronic giving platform, the thing that was said is that giving increased, particularly amongst young people, uh,
Absolutely. And
because
we get resources in my local church like during the week. I mean, because people are able to do it when they're thinking about it.
right,
So we make it convenient for the way people live today. Um, and that makes a huge difference. But I went to the Joint Conference in Baltimore in 2014, and one of the first things I was confronted with downtown was one of panhandlers, asking for money for change. I said, man, I don't carry no change. You have a swipe machine? I might give you a swipe. But I think that's so familiar. Just because of creativity, I probably find something for you. But yeah, I mean, it's just the way that things are. And that people use, young people use Cash App and Zelle, and this is very familiar to them, or Swipe, chip card, or whatever it is. Um, where I would say probably, oh man, it's a high number, maybe 40% at least of our revenues are coming um, are coming electronically. Um, yesterday, I know it was about 50% that was electronic.
wow.
So, and and then when we have something, where we have a charity auction or something like that.
Mhm.
So we had one a couple of years ago. I think we made about 4,000, and almost all of it came electronically.
Mhm.
So,
It makes a world of difference in the life of the church. So, not particularly talking about young people and young adults, I think I have a two-part question for you. Um, how should young adults, I think, period, be preparing for their financial futures? But additionally, for those of us who are members of the CME Church, how do you see that kind of positive, preemptive preparation for their financial futures affecting the life of the church down the road?
um, that's a good challenge. So we're actually working with some other partners on matters of financial literacy that have done a pretty big job. Like we're working now with the 100 Black Men,
Mhm.
and even some of the like, travels abroad, in particular Nigeria, working with the chair of the 100 National 100 Black Men, and I believe we're going to get a chapter started in Nigeria as well. So this will extend beyond, and with other faith partners that we have. But we really need to bring together a plethora of assets, corporate assets, and because it's really not something that is just a part of us. I mean, you take majority community. I mean, they came up with things. I mean, people had investment portfolios, and reading about the stock market and the economy, and all of that has not been something that we have really done. And many of us tend to think, for example, we have no investment or whatever, but you say, well, do you have a 401k? Oh, yeah.
Mhm.
Oh, okay. You've got a stake. So just in the spread of that and our financial literacy. So we were able to, a year and a half ago, we had a meeting with the general officers and the bishops, a first of its kind since I've been a general officer, including the 12 years that I was a general officer of Department of Lay Ministry. And then at that time, about 4 years into uh, being CFO, we had a meeting, and I expressed at that time, with regard to the training, that we do a Unity Summit, because we have a Unity Summit every year. And It said, well, we stand up the programmatic department leaders to uh, give training in the Unity Summit. And the question I had, and I was able to glean from their lack of objection. My question was, I never, or my statement was, I never understood how the finances uh, were not programmatic.
Hmm.
You know, finance. So I never understood why Department of Finance and now Finance and Investments was not part of programmatic ministry.
Hmm.
So we're actually bringing to, and I believe hopefully we're going to have space in Atlanta for the first time to bring programmatic aspects to the general church. And we think that young people will be one of our special targets because of the need to educate in a broad sense and to expand our financial literacy and systemic investing. So systemic giving, systemic investing, I think they go hand in hand.
Yeah. Um, so I think my next thought thinking about that. So the focus this year for the Connectional Young Adult Ministry is social justice
Mm-hmm.
and what that means in the life of the church and for individuals. And I think it's a question we don't ask often, but when we talk about inequity and access to resources and things like that, what do you, how do you see the role of stewardship in particular, justice, both for individuals and the local church?
I've heard the expression, no justice, no peace. Certainly, no investment, no peace. I mean, people. I remember who was it? Dave Chappelle, I think, said something about talking to an audience, and uh, I guess his perception was that people were of a lower economic tier, and he said, "You all believe that the president is working for you. He's working for me." He said he's working for him because he's wealthy.
Right.
So they, we're set up in a way where with with the economy certainly of the United States and the dynamic economies, the growth economies of the world are not ones where you're looking for um, as much, even for, when you take our HBCUs or you take our inner cities,
Mhm.
uh, we we are looking, I think, increasingly not for handouts, if you will, but hand ups, and that we can get ownership. If we can get equal opportunity, then we can get ownership. So the social justice aspect really becomes in terms of what is our ownership in the community. Both, this is very prominent, right, in terms of housing, and what's happened with gentrification, um, and just being mindful. Do you just sell your property, or you try to leverage it?
Mhm.
Airbnb and stuff. Take the longer view of things, and I think that's those are aspects which come to prominence in terms of our stewardship. Our stewardship not just being how much we give in church on Sunday, if you will, but what is our stewardship in the community, especially as it would relate to social justice. What is our responsibility in the community? And I just think we've had more and more Black leaders, where you take something like, Kobe Bryant and what he was doing and what is meant. And then it took a death of a leader like that to see really what kind of impact
Right.
he was having. And it really is an ownership type of mentality, a stewardship. And I watch a lot of sports and certainly watched Kobe Bryant over the years, of course, living in Chicago and supporting Michael Jordan. But this is the first time in hearing about his death when the last thing they did, they went for communion.
Mm-hmm.
He and his daughters, 7:00 in the morning.
Right.
So they said they got there early. Were the only communicants, I guess at that hour. So there, and obviously Mamba mentality and what have you, and that he owned the facility that they were going to. I think it's that the ownership aspect has a great impact in that era, in our era of social justice. And I think it's something that hasn't been emphasized. It's more, to me, a lot of times it's more a situation of, well, if you're in the majority community, or if you are in the what do they call it, the privileged community, that you need to step back. But that's not realistic. My brother used to say, take it easy, but take it. So I just think we have to we have to be very proactive in terms of owning in our community, and the owning is an aspect that clearly generates a lot of giving. But the kind of discipline that it takes to become an owner of an enterprise, of a home, of a community organization, is akin to the discipline of giving and being a good steward financially with respect to the local church. So I think that those principles come together, and that we're able to marry them and generate very positive returns.
Right. So as we wrap up, I have one last question for you, and it's to tap into your wisdom and your experience. So if you could provide just one brief word of wisdom for young adults in particular, and emerging leaders in the church, what would that be?
To make money the old-fashioned way, inherit it. So that's if we want to build things up where we're not no longer like paupers. You look at the Jesuits and other. They've had profound impact because they invested over the decades, even centuries. Mm-hmm. And so if we can get past the hand to mouth, just what's in it for me today, and to serve the interests of things greater than we are, and things that we can't see today, that's certainly my message, that we need to leave a goodly, in the words of Bishop Brown, or at least from the scripture, a goodly heritage.
Absolutely. Well, Dr. Taylor, thank you so much for your time, and for letting us in on the vision, the future, and the work of the Department of Finance and Investments, and for what that's going to mean for the future of our church. So join us for our next session where we talk to another leader of our church about the work that they're doing, its life with young adults, and the impact it has on the future of our church. God bless you all. Dr. Taylor, thank you again.
Thank you so much. I appreciate the time and the opportunity.
All right.